Hey guys, welcome to the F4U Corsair for Magnitude 3 for DCS World, and I'm gonna run through a startup, takeoff, flight, shutdown, and try to replace two videos that I made earlier. Apologies, I'm making this stuff kind of in real time, and I'm learning as I go. And maybe that's my fault, and you know, and I'm sorry if I confuse people or anything like that. It's not my intent, and it's certainly not my intent to make thousands of YouTube dollars, because that doesn't exist at my level. It's really just I like to share information, and I think with this module it kind of needs it, just with the kind of lackluster release that it came with. And I like this aircraft, so I do want to share what I know. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort of condense some things that I've talked about in those two videos that I've taken down, because I want to be clear on some things, and I want to correct some things, and I don't want to have to go back and try to fix those in addendum or something like that. So we'll just kind of start from scratch. And what we're going to do is we're going to start up the aircraft. We're going to take off. We're going to fly around a little bit. We're going to talk about the supercharger and some cooling and things like that, some RPMs. And then we're going to go back and land. So we're going to kind of condense two videos into one and cover things. So first of all, let's talk about the wings. We've got this lock here, and then we've got the wing folding. We probably should have those mapped. I mean, you could do it this way. That's fine. If the cockpit's too dark for you, you can't see, you want to have those mapped. That's fine. Over here, we've got our RPM control. Okay, and our RPMs are here. Our prop control, I should say. But that's going to affect our RPMs here. We've got our throttle, of course. We've got a button that for water injection. We're not really going to mess with that today. We've got our supercharger, which has got three positions. We've got neutral, low, and high. We've got our mixture, which really I've just got mapped because there's basically three positions, and I'm really only going to use the middle position. I haven't found really a use. It could affect temperatures, but I've had no problem with kind of keeping it low, at least for now. Maybe dogfighting, things like that, it'll be more important. Of course, we've got our fuel. We're going to need fuel to start this thing. We got our main tank and our reserve tank. We only have a gauge. To my knowledge, we can only figure out what we got in the main tank. Our reserve tank's got 50 gallons. I know we've got some droppable tanks. I haven't messed with those yet. We've got our landing gear. Our gear is down, thank goodness. Goes up. And then our gear is actually used as our dive brake. So the default key, I haven't changed it, as B. So once you've got the gear up, and if you needed to dive and use the dive brakes, what it's going to do is actually just drop your main gear. It's not going to drop the tail wheel, but just your mains. And that's going to pop out and then go up to here when you hit B. So that's going to drop just the mains. Back here, I forgot at the tail wheel unlock, not the nose wheel. We don't have a nose wheel. You might hear me say nose wheel because my real job has a nose wheel, and I say it all the time. But this is our tail wheel. And I don't like it because it spawns unlocked. We're going to go ahead and lock it now because I will forget. We've got trim for our rudder. We've got trim for our elevator. And we've got trim for our roll. Here's our gear position. Here's our flaps. We've got down to 50 degrees flaps. We can take off with pretty much anything. You can take off with nothing. I'm typically landing around 30 to 50, depending on the situation. I'm typically taking off 20 to 30. Hidden underneath that is our magnetos. We've got left, right, both. We're going to go ahead and just flick those on for now. Over here to the right, we've got our oil intercooler and our engine cowl flaps. Okay, so we're going to mess with those, and those are going to help us maintain our cylinder head temperature, our oil temperature, and our carburetor with that intercooler. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we fly. I should cover some of these gauges. Of course, we've got the RPMs I've talked about, our manifold pressure, our altitude, and our airspeed. Of course, we've got all these other things, but these are the kind of the big three that we're going to pay attention to on this side. And then over here, like I said, the cylinder, and then our oil temp. What I like to do is move this cover out of the way, because then it lets you see that needle a lot easier. All right, so those are pretty much the big things we need to worry about. So I'm going to go ahead and start the engine. I've got the fuel set. Now, I think real world, they would actually use the reserve tank, because I think the reserve tank has an electrical pump that's automatically going. In game, I have not had any issues using mains. So you can use either one. I'm going to leave the mixture off, but I have it mapped because you're going to need to be able to throw it forward pretty quick. And reaching over here and doing this it's kind of funky. So I'm going to go ahead and I've got that mapped so I can just do that real fast. I'm gonna leave the prop control to full. This is actually full, which seems kind of strange, but let me unlock my stuff here. So that's full, and then that's low, so it's kind of opposite. Same with the supercharger there. All right, so we've got our fuel set up. I'm gonna go ahead and crack the throttle a little ways here. Over here, I'm gonna turn on the cockpit lights, just so when I turn on the battery, the lights come on. Turn on the fuel pump. And I'm gonna hit the primer between 5 and 15 seconds, I think is the book answer. I usually do about 6 or 7 seconds, whatever. And what I'm gonna do is I've primed it. I'm gonna take that cover off the starter. I'm gonna hold the starter. The prop's gonna start to turn. Once it kicks on, the engine kicks over. I'm gonna hit that mixture to lean. And I'm gonna hold the starter just for another second or so. All right, so I'm gonna hold the brakes. Prop's turning. And there it's coughed, mixture, and release. Okay, and now we've got it. So now I'm gonna just ease up the RPMs. All right, so this is what kind of screwed me up because I wasn't paying attention. Because I'm an idiot. That little dial right there. So I'm just gonna crank this up a little bit, get the speed going. But you see that little 1 in there. So right now we're at 17. Okay, so we don't need to have that or whatever, but we're just gonna keep that RPM up a little high and get our temperatures and pressures down within limits. So while we talk, or while we get that set up, we'll talk a little bit about the wings. What I am gonna do is set the emergency brake. And there it is. All right, emergency brake is set. I physically don't know where that's at. I've been looking for it. I should look in the manual. I'm too lazy. But I've got that bound. Just set those brakes. I'm gonna go ahead and drop the wings down. So I'm gonna unlock. And I'm gonna bring the wings down. And that wing handle control is right there. So I'm gonna go to spread. And we should hear a horn here in a second. And that's letting us know that the wing is down but not locked. And once that's all complete, we can hit that switch right there. And it locks, the horn goes away. So now we know that we are locked in the spread position. While we're over here, we can go ahead and set our trims for takeoff. I'm going to set about 5 or 6 for the yaw. And I'm going to set about a degree nose high and about 6 on the right roll. Now, I can tell you right now, you can take off without doing any of that. You just might have to do some pilot stuff, but you can take off like that. All right, over here, we're talking about our temperatures and pressures. I'm going to go ahead and open up the cowl flaps. And again, I have these mapped for simplicity because when we're flying around, we're going to need to be messing with these a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and open up the cowl flaps. And what that does is allows air into the actual engine. As we look outside, we can see the cowl flaps there. I'll go ahead and close them up. You can see them moving. As for the intercooler, you can see it right there underneath the engine. And then for the oil cooler, a little bit harder to see. You kind of see them opening up right there underneath the root of the wing. You can see that. Alright, so what I have found, for simplicity, because that's what I'm all about, is I'm going to open up the oil cooler and intercooler to about the midway position. And I found that that helps me out and keeps everything straight. The thing I use the most is that cowl flap control. And you'll see that cylinder temperature change pretty dramatically if you keep it closed too much or open too much. Alright, so we've got the trim set, we've got the tail wheel locked, we've got our wings out and locked. Our engine is started. We can close the canopy here with this switch if we want to. I'm going to close it just for noise sake, but I think normally you would take off with that open in case you had to get out quickly. And we'll talk a little bit about takeoff while we let things kind of stabilize. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off with our propeller in full, prop in full. We're going to advance the throttle. Pay attention to that manifold. We're going to get to about 30, 35. We're going to release the brakes. We're going to advance to about 50. We're going to hold that. We're going to maintain directional control with our pedals. And we're going to take off. And you're going to see the aircraft to pretty much take off on its own. You're not going to need to do a whole lot. Let's go ahead and set our flaps too while we're thinking about it. So I'm going to go with a 20 on the flaps. I don't have anything on board. We got a pretty long runway. No issues. All right, then we're going to take off. We're going to obviously bring the gear up. We're going to start bringing the flaps up. And then we're going to pull back on that manifold a little bit. I don't know, I usually go about 40, something like that, 40, 45. And then we'll kind of ease the RPMs back to about 25. So this is where things get screwed. And it screwed me up because I wasn't paying attention. There's too many other things going on in my head. But that's going to become a 2. So we got a 7. So 2, 7. So it's kind of like an altimeter. I was kind of pulling back here to 2, 3, thinking that this was 2 to 3, and it's you know, simple thing that my brain just kind of registered it differently. I didn't really notice that little window. So we're gonna go back to about 2.7 or so. You can go to 2.5. But point is, we're gonna pull back the RPMs. We're not gonna leave it jammed up the entire time. We're gonna wear the engine out, and after about 30 minutes, you're gonna break something. All right, so again, take off 30, release brakes 50, hold that, airspeed's alive, take off. Gear, flaps, RPM control, get us to around 2.5, 2.7, something like that. And we'll continue to climb up. And then we'll talk about the rest after that. So I've got the cow flaps open. We'll leave those open for now, and then we'll kind of adjust those as we go. All right, so I'm ready to go. I think you guys are ready to go. I've been talking really slow. I'm trying to do that on purpose so I can be thoughtful. Plus I've had a couple drinks. All right, let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and release my parking brakes, my emergency brake, whatever we want to call it. And I'm going to start bringing in that power. There's that 30. I'm just continuing to push through the throttle till we get to around 50. That nose is going to come down on its own. There it is. Rolling. Now I'm barely moving the stick back. I mean, almost to the point where I'm just thinking about it. We got positive rate. Gear's coming up. We're just going to keep that climb going. Alright, that's cool. We're going to bring some flaps to 10, and nose is going to pop up. We'll start easing back on the power just a little bit. Just a tiny bit. Let's go flaps fully up. I'm going to retrim as I go. I'll just make a slight adjustment to my prop control. I'll take it to 2.6. How about that? We'll call it, we can see right there. 2.6. That sounds good. And we'll just keep that power in. Airspeed's about 140, 150. Now what's easy to do, especially when you're staring at these gauges and stuff, is to start losing directional control. Obviously you've got your heading there, which don't be confused, we're not heading north, we're heading 3-0. Okay. We'll just continue to climb, make some adjustments to our trim. So I've got some right pedal in, so I'm going to release that right pedal slowly while I trim. Sort of relieve that pressure until my feet are basically neutral. Okay, and the same with my stick. I've got a little bit of left stick, so I'm gonna trim to the left. Take some of that pressure out. Just try to maintain my directional control. So I'm gonna go ahead and increase the power now. Everything's looking good. All right, we can see our cylinder temperature is increasing. That's okay. Our oil temperature is a little higher than it was, but it's still well within limits. I'll bring in a little bit more prop. And I'm just gonna bring in that power. Now what we don't want to do is go full blast on the throttle. You can see there's a little wire there, and that's where we start getting into the automatic water injection system. We don't want that, so I'm just gonna hold around 50-ish or so, kind of right by that wire. So my throttle throw is probably at about 75%, something like that. And I'm just gonna maintain this. You can see we're going about 1,000 feet per minute on the climb. We got a little bit of a turn because I'm talking and flying. Get the aircraft back in trim. And we're gonna have to make adjustments as we go, and that's okay. And we'll just continue to climb. But the thing that we want to pay attention to is those temperatures and pressures. So right now, the cowl flaps are open pretty much all the way. Temperature's well within limits. I'm going to start closing those a little bit because there's a lot of drag coming off of that. And I've got some play with my temperatures. So my RPMs are good. My manifold is good. And as we get higher, this is where the superchargers are coming in. As we're getting higher, our manifold is going to start to decrease. We're not going to mess with the throttle, but the manifold is just not going to be able to maintain what it once was. And that's where the supercharger comes in. As we get higher, the supercharger is going to allow for more air to get into the engine. You know, a bunch of science that I don't fully understand and care about. And as that manifold decreases, it's telling us that the engine needs some help, and that's what the supercharger is going to do. So we're at about 6,000 feet. Our manifold is dropping a little bit, despite the fact that I have not moved the throttle. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and move that supercharger to the low position, and you can see that manifold is already starting to pump back up. All right, so it's going up to 50, and that's good. We're going to continue that climb. Again, trying to maintain my directional control. We're still at 2,000 feet per minute. Okay, and we can pump up the RPMs a little bit on the prop. Go to like 2.7. I'm going to keep it a little bit on the low side. We're at 170 knots. We're climbing at 2,000 feet per minute. All right, our manifold's getting a little high, so I'm going to pull back on the throttle because I don't want it to be that high. The supercharger's doing some work. Looking over here, everything's still within the green or the blue. I'm just going to maintain that manifold around 50. And I'll put a link in the description for the old school World War II era F4 manual. And it kind of talks about some of this stuff. I think page 36 is is where it starts. 35, 36. You can take a look at it yourself. But we're doing good. Manifold's good. Pressures, temperatures are all good. And what we can do, of course, as we get higher, things get cooler. We can close some of those oil coolers and intercoolers. Decrease the drag. Increase the heat a little bit. Kind of make that trade-off. I'm not going to do that right now. What I will do to demonstrate, because this is probably going to happen to you, I'm going to close the cowl flaps completely. So they're completely closed. And we'll give it a minute or two. We're going to watch. And that cylinder temperature is probably going to increase on us. And that's okay. We have time. There's time to react to it. Once it starts to climb, if it gets past that red line, it's not like the engine's just suddenly going to explode. That's not going to happen. What you're going to do is you can open those cowl flaps back up. You can decrease your throttle a little bit, and you'll get it back within limits. It's not immediate. But you can see just in the time that I've been monologuing, we're already getting close to the red line, okay? So we're pretty much right at the red line. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and open those back up, and we'll see how quickly that cools off. All right, so I've opened about maybe halfway or so, and it's stopped to that climb to the red line, and now it's coming back down. So it's pretty responsive. So if you find yourself in that situation, don't freak out. And I didn't even adjust the throttle or the manifold. Okay, so what we're going to do is continue the climb. We're at 12,000 feet. Our RPMs are at 26.5. Our manifold's still at 5.0. And as we continue to go, that manifold's probably going to drop. Well, I still got plenty of room in my throttle. Okay, I've got plenty of room to continue to push it up. Once I get it to that, I don't want to say full open, but again, that kind of 75%. If you think about it in terms of a jet, like right before you hit the afterburner type level, once you get it to that point and it's just not able to hold that 50 or 49, 48 range, that's when you need to move the supercharger into the next level. All right, so our cylinder temperatures are still looking good. I'm going to go ahead and close those just a smidge. What I have found is about right there, kind of just open like, I don't know, what looks like an inch or so. Seems to be okay. Again, our oil temperature, everything's looking good. We're not getting any carb issues. So again, the oil cooler and intercooler, I'm just leaving them as is, trying to maintain my directional control while I talk. All right, manifold's dropping, so I'm going to give it a little bit more power, a little bit more juice. with throttle. We're just going to continue to climb. We're at 15,000, closing in on 15,000. I've still got some play. So we're probably going to continue this way as we get up through, you know, 18 or so. And that's probably roundabouts where we're going to need to put in that next stage of the supercharger or the blower. All right, you can see that shift to lower blower if light is on. If you see anything about blower, that's what they're referring to. So my manifolds, again, dropping a little bit because we're getting higher. The engine's just having a harder time. The air is thinner up here, all that jazz. Just having a tougher time putting out the energy that we need. And we're going to reach a point where it just can't do anything more by itself, and it's going to want that second stage of the blower. So as we're climbing, we're continuing to monitor our cylinder heads, continuing to monitor our temperatures, our oil temperatures, a little higher than it was before, but still well within limits. Pressure's good. Got plenty of fuel. Everything's looking good. And we're still climbing at 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet. We can maintain 2,000 easy. I'm just, again, talking and not paying attention to what I'm doing. Our airspeed's around, what, 135? Something like that. And we're continuing up to 17. Manifold is again dropping. So I'm just slowly increasing the throttle. I'm almost at that limit. In fact, I'm at that limit right now. I can feel the little, you know, detent in my throttle that tells me I'm about to hit the burners. So that's kind of where we're at, where we can go further. We'll get that water injection going on. But we don't want that. We don't want to use that. So right now the manifold is dropping on its own. But when it gets to about 47, you know, again, who cares? When it gets low and it keeps getting lower, that's where we're going to go to that second stage blower. So I'm going to move that up. And now the manifold, you can see it increasing. I'm not changing the throttle at all, but you can see that manifold is getting higher. So it's getting more responsive. So now I can make adjustments to my throttle, pull it back a little bit if I want, keep it around 50. We'll continue to climb. So we're passing 18,000. I've pulled back a good, I don't know, 15, 20% on my throttle. I've got my manifold there at 50. RPMs are still at the 2650 range. We're still climbing at 2,000 feet per minute. We're still looking good on our temperatures, pressures, and we're doing great. So I'm going to start turning back towards the island. And I'll go ahead and kind of skip forward. I know I've been talking this whole time. Hopefully it's helpful. We'll go back to the island. We'll talk about the dive brakes, i.e. our landing gear. And then we'll talk about how to land. Alright. We are at, what are we at? Almost 25,000 feet. Temperatures and pressures are good. I've got that throttle at that 75 afterburner detent level. The aircraft's kind of leveled out. Manifold is not going to get any better without me pushing the throttle forward. What we can do, if we're going to cruise and maintain this, we can lower that prop RPM a little bit, take us down to like 25. Something like that. Kind of let the nose kind of drop down, and just pick up our airspeed again and just kind of cruise here. But what we're going to do is head over to the airfield, and we'll use our dive brakes. So my manifold is hanging out about 45. RPMs are about 25. Cowl flaps are almost completely closed. I could close them all the way up, and I'm about to descend anyway. So the speed brakes, or the dive brakes, again, is just our main landing gear. So when I hit the key, which is B, that's the default key, I haven't bothered to change it, it's going to deploy our brakes. Now, I believe the book says something about 300 knots being the limit is when you should deploy the brakes. I've done it past that. It hasn't broken it. Doesn't mean it's wrong. So just keep that in mind. So we'll get a little bit closer to the island. We'll dive down. We'll hit the brakes. And then we'll land this sucker. Alright, I think we're good enough. RPMs are 25. Airspeed's at 180. We're at about 25,000 feet, a little bit above. Temperatures and pressures are good. So what we're going to do is just roll over into a dive. We'll deploy those brakes. We'll try to deploy them prior to hitting 300 knots. So right now, again, we're at about 190. We got a little bit of a descent going. So we'll go ahead and roll over. I'm going to ease back on the throttle. Alright, my speed's at 250. I'm going to go ahead and deploy my brakes. So I've brought my props all the way to full. And my throttle is down. I've got the brakes out. You can see we're still cruising in there at 340 knots. So we'd be dropping a lot faster. Now the supercharger's not a big deal anymore, so I'm gonna go ahead and just turn that off because we're gonna stay down here at low altitude. So I'm gonna take the supercharger to neutral. We do need to be careful we don't super cool the engine, but the cowl flaps are closed. We're doing pretty much all we can there. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull the brakes back in. I'm gonna pull myself out of this dive. Alright, and the gear is up. So now we're going to get ready to land. I'm going to keep my props at full so that prop is all the way down. Arguably you could go to mixture full rich. I've, again, not had any reason to do that. Oil temperature's good. Oil pressure's high, but that's just because of the kind of going to idle and diving and all that stuff. It'll start to pull itself back into limits as I pull in that power. I'm gonna start bringing in that power at the manifold. Where did that sneaky runway go? There it is. All right, so we'll go ahead and pull back around to the airport. Get this pig back under control. We're coming out 250 knots. All right, so stall speed is around 80. We want to land around 90 or so. It's pretty robust. It's made to land on carriers. So you can kind of slam it down, but you won't need to. Alright, so I'm going to pull that power back just a little bit more. And I want to drop the gear at or below 200 knots. I think the limitation probably has more to do with the tail wheel since we can drop our main gear at 300 knots. If I'm reading it correctly. Alright, so we're at 200 knots now. I'll go ahead and pop the gear out. And I'll go ahead and start putting in some flaps. Of course, the nose is going to come down as we put in the flaps, which is a good thing because we got a big ass nose. So I'm at flaps 20 right now. I can go ahead and open up those cowl flaps if I want. I'm letting that speed drop down. I'm at 110 knots now. That's good. I'll go ahead and keep bringing in those flaps. I'm at flaps 40 right now. The flaps do have speed protection. The book says, you know, don't rely on that to not break your brakes or your flaps, but that they kind of know, you know, what speed you're going, so they'll try and protect themselves. All right, so we're at flaps 40 right now. We should be. Gear is down. Runway's in sight. We're at a little over 90 knots. I'm gonna get that last notch of flaps in. So as we look at the runway, we're going to lose sight of that approach in, but we can look left and right and kind of see some cues, some visual cues, so I can see that curve in the road. It's kind of a beam, the touchdown point. So if I lose the touchdown point, I'm going to kind of aim at the curve in the road just to beam that, right? Alright, so my speed's at about 90 knots. That's good. That's where we want to be. Now, as we increase or decrease throttle, we're going to get some roll rate. So as I'm decreasing, I'm increasing. You can see how the aircraft's kind of yawing back and forth and rolling. That's that P factor and all that jazz. Okay, so we want to avoid that. We want to make very small control inputs and make rudder inputs as we do that, okay? So I'm at 90 knots. I'm feeling good. I've lost sight of the runway. I kind of sit up in my seat, get my lane alignment. Of course, if we had severe crosswinds, we'd have to put our nose into that a little bit. So I'm going to come on down here. I will flare here at the end. Just a little bit. There we go. Try and maintain our directional control best we can. Might have to use a little bit of differential braking because as you get slow, that vertical fin, your rudder is not going to have authority. But you don't want to slam on the brakes. If you do that, you're going to nose this puppy over. I'm just kind of pulling back on the stick a little bit. Some aerodynamic braking. A little bit of braking with my feet. And we'll bring the aircraft to a halt. Now, I didn't mention it, but kind of mentioned it, I guess, maybe the tail wheel. Want to make sure that it's locked. Landing with it unlocked can be a little bit dicey. We'll make sure that that's locked before landing too. Okay, any aircraft's brought to a halt. We can apply our brakes, we can shut her down, whatever we want to do, just hit the mixture of magnetos, whatever whatever your game is to turn it off. But I think we covered it all, hopefully, at least enough to get you guys in the air, flying around and understanding the engine and not blowing the engine as before. A couple of things, I'll just address the things that I screwed up or maybe didn't explain very well in the takeoff video and the engine management video. The takeoff video talked about the wings. There's the order I did it here makes a little bit more sense. Also, I think it's just a little bit cleaner in how we talked about things. Also, I kind of talked about engine management, and I was really meaning just kind of takeoff and landing. I wasn't talking about in-flight. And then for the engine management, one thing that I did screw up, again, I kind of addressed it here, is the RPMs. I was just misreading the gauge, and I wasn't really thinking about it, because obviously now we're going 8,000 RPMs, but I just wasn't thinking about it very clearly, because it's hard to think and make these videos and sort of put your thoughts together as you do this stuff. And I don't like to do scripts. I like to just kind of wing it. So hopefully, I think we covered everything pretty well. I mean, this flight took, I don't know what, 35 minutes according to OBS. Probably about 40, because I did a little bit of speeding there as I turned around for the island. So I've got to try to trim some fat out of this, because I don't want that video to be that long. But thanks, guys, for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying the Corsair, and hopefully these videos, again, are helping you understand sort of the basics. Plenty of other great content creators are going to come out with some stuff. I just want to get you guys started. That's really all I ever want to do. Oh, and last thing I want to show you. If you think these mirrors suck ass, which I thought, hit M, and it turns them into the good one. It's not like the F15 where you click on it and then it gets better. You have to hit M. At least that's the default key. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for watching. We'll see you.